Ladies and gentlemen, this is another episode of the Disguise Royalty for You podcast. I'm here joined with Scotty Carlisle with the Move podcast, and this guy has been nice enough to have me in his studio. Is nicer than anything I've been in so far. So, Scotty, give your introduction, buddy.
So this is a conglomeration between the Move podcast
Yes.
and Disguised Royalty for You. And so I'm happy that you came here, man. Ernie introduced us. I think whoever I called you or you called me, whatever it was, but we immediately hit it off because you have a very positive, energetic attitude, and it was just great. So we're on the same track, moving in the same direction. So I figured it would be good.
And I was worried, man. I really was. I was like, Ernie reached out. I was like, dude, this guy, Ernie Beckham, shout out, Ernie. You know, he was such a sweetheart in there, man, in the emergency room. The guy just freaking got peeled off by a great all. Okay, so I'm peeled off my dirt bike, and I'm like, you know, hanging out with this guy. I'm like, is this guy cool? You know, we're sharing a room together, you know. Ends up being a nice guy. Long story short, he refers me to you, dude. And then he was like, dude, reach out to this guy. Whatever, I reached out, and I know you're a busy guy. Now I know you're a busy guy. I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't hear from you right away. So I was like, is this like, am I, you know, I was fresh into my podcast. So I was like, still like just crawling into it, like going like, what am like, is this me? Am I sure? Am I going the right way? You know what I mean? And when you reached out, I was like, it just like gave me some validation, you know, I got like some mental clarity, and I was like, okay. And then I was telling your helper, I was like, hey, every time I always reach out to Scotty and I never hear back from him. She's like, oh yeah, that's me on the other line. I'm like, well, reply. I'm over here like, hey, what's going on? Like, Scotty, let's do a collab. Let's collab, bro. Like, what's going on? I'm like, man, I guess
crickets.
Yeah, I'm like, maybe the guy's not really trying to collab today. I'm like, well, you know, you win some, you lose some.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's
dude.
Funny.
Thanks for. By the way, though, thanks for having me here in this beautiful place in what is the city called again?
Gavilan Hills. It's actually Paris.
It's Paris, bro, but this ain't Paris.
Exactly.
This is not Paris. For anybody who doesn't know, Gavilan Hills is a beautiful area located in the sunny skies of Paris, California, and it's like a little piece of heaven in Paris. For people who know Paris, California. Spit.
Yeah, Paris is a very interesting place. You have one side where, you know, it's out there, and then there's not many areas that are a lot nicer. There's a lot of areas that could use improvement.
Totally.
And so anyway, this is one of those areas that we just got really lucky. My wife was really on it when it came to real estate stuff, and then I also do my own deals. So I was the real estate agent and the loan officer, and was able to put a very attractive offer together. So then we ended up getting it. And so what's really funny is Veronica Lee, who was the real estate agent, is actually very close with Ernie Beckham. So it is a very small world, and you never know who you're going to come across and who they know.
God, thank you again, Ernie, for linking me with this man. It's just funny how that is, man. You know, he was giving me so much support, and I just, you know, I know he was messed up. I don't know. I haven't even checked in on him. I kept saying when I get healed up, I'm going to go take him a 12-pack and we're going to have some beers, and we still haven't got to have that moment yet. And you know what? Now that we're talking about it, I'm probably going to crash him in the next few days or few weeks. You know, I got to reach out. The guy was like,
he was very lucky. He was driving a tractor and it fell on him. And I mean, obviously he could have been killed, and then his leg was trapped. And so he literally had to have authorities come and help him escape, and he didn't even break his leg. So he's very lucky.
He's very lucky, man.
But it's funny how things work out, and because he met you there, and it's interesting how there are synchronicities in our lives, and that people and our friends are connected in ways that we don't realize, and that the person that is sitting across from you or behind the scenes could be responsible for a really big boon in your life, or they could be responsible for some bumps in the road where you,
for sure,
where you snap your neck or something bad like that. So what happened with your motorcycle accident?
So you want to know the details?
Of course.
All right. So, um, little background. I've been riding dirt bikes, dude, since I was like 3.5. Like actually been able to ride a little PW. Okay. And then I would do that at my grandpa's house. And then I got to be like 5 years old, and then I started like, getting good at like confident, and I started like, understanding the mechanics of the dirt bike. So my dad bought me another dirt bike that had like a swing arm on it. It wasn't a PW. If anybody knows what a PW 50 is, it's like a little, just the tiniest little dirt bike ever. And so he bought me that, and then I was like trying to send jumps, and then one day we're driving home from the track, or from the hills, and then we stumbled across this track out in Paris. It was called Star West then. So we go there after a day of riding, and I'm like amped to see little kids riding. I've never seen little kids ride. Okay,
Cool.
and I'm like, oh my god, I'm like, little kids ride a track. My dad's like, is that awesome? He's like, let's go check it out. So we go check it out, and he like just pays whatever the practice fee, and then he pulls my bike down, and he's like, just run some laps. So that's where my journey started in motocross. I was like, started going there, and then I started begging him to take me back. So then I started doing the practice nights. Then practice nights turned into, hey, why don't you sign him up for a race? He's pretty good. Started signing up for a race. My first race I ever raced, I took a third place. So then from there on out, I don't think I ever placed less than third. Okay, so it was like a calling in mine,
Right.
something I really found. I enjoyed it. So I did motocross for like pretty much up until I was like 16, pretty consistent, riding a lot, riding a lot. When I was probably getting into like 125s, I stopped racing because I got peeled off a couple times too. Then when I was, learning curves, and then so I was like, you know what, I want to take a step back from competing, and I just want to just stay practicing, and just, I was really good at it. So I was like, I don't really need to go race to have fun. You know what I mean? I wasn't
Yeah.
learning. I was still, you're always learning, but I didn't feel like I was learning at the time. I felt like I was just going to flow. You know what I mean? So I would go there and just have flow and just have fun. And then I got a girlfriend.
Mm.
Okay. So then that whole thing started. And then
And you were how old at this time?
I was about 15.
Okay, that's about right.
Yeah, so I was about 15. I got a girlfriend that I really like fell in love with, and then I was like, man, I kind of like didn't I still rode, but I kind of put the dirt bike second, and then I was like focused on this, and um so, busted this arm. You can see that. It's been pretty peeled up, both my wrists are broken, both my collarbones are broken. So I got some skin
Wow.
in the game, you know what I
Wow.
mean?
Yeah.
So let's fast forward a little
Did
bit.
both of your collarbones get broken on the same
No,
crash?
no,
Different times?
different times.
Oh man.
Yeah,
My son broke his collarbone and oh man, he went through it. It was football and just
walking,
one
can't
side.
sleep. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, just stiff neck. Yeah. So fast forward, 18 years old. I had a badass race bike my dad built for me, 250 Kawasaki race bike. Like it was fast, full blown, expensive parts on it, and I was riding that, and I kind of wanted to move out of my dad's house. So I told my dad, I was like, can I was working already with him doing foundations. And I was like, can I sell my dirt bike and then use that money to get like out? And my dad was like, you really want to do that, huh? And I was like, I want to try it. You did it. He moved out
Yeah.
early. I was like, let me try it. He's like, dude, I know what that feeling's like. Go give it a shot. So I sold
Good
my
for
dirt
him.
bike. Yeah. Pocketed some cash, and I was working. So I had some money. So I was able to get like furniture and get my, my deposit. So I get going. So I was out of dirt bikes. You know what I mean? I wasn't doing dirt bikes. So then, some time went on, and then I took like a fat break, man. I took like 8 years off of dirt bikes, and then I met my wife, and she was like, I've never met somebody who loves dirt bikes so much and follows the sport so much and knows the statistics, like just knows all about it through and through, that doesn't ride. And it just hit me in the face.
Right.
I was like, shut up. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, shut up. So then I was like, you know what? One day I was at work. I just made the deal on the phone with the dealer. I was like, I got a brand new bike. I called my wife. She's like, really? You did that? I'm like, you pushed me to this extreme. Like you're making fun of me. Yeah, I'm going back in it. She's like, man, okay. So I start riding, dude, and my only supporter was my wife. that was going out to the track with me. My dad would go sometimes, but I was so rusty and so out of it. I was like, what happened to me? So I went through this phase for like a year, full squid mode, like just not getting my bearings
Just
rolling.
gun shy
Yeah,
and
just
everything.
everything, right? So I get rid of that bike. I'm like, fuck this bike. This bike's I think it's the bike. It was the bike. It turned out it was the bike. I got a
Oh
different,
wow.
yeah, I know it was weird. Got a different bike, and then I started to find myself again, and then keep going, start meeting some buddies at the track. Then my wife stops coming with me to the track, okay, because now I got buddies.
Right.
So then I start going to the buddies, start getting testosterone in the game. You know
Yeah.
how that is. Like, let's
Yeah.
start messing around. So then I started to really elevate myself back again. I start feeling like a tiger again. I'm like, oh man, I'm ready to start racing again. I'm like, yeah, I want to go in the vet class in the 30 plus. I'm like, I think I can smoke these dudes. So sure as shit, dude. My first race, I take third place. Okay, so I'm like, man, okay, I'm not far. I can see the leader, you
Yeah.
know. So second race, take a second place. I'm like,
Okay, so
oh,
you're making
I'm
progress.
making progress, and now I'm practicing in my weekdays with intention now. And you know what happens to the mind when you start setting intention. And before I was going to the track with no intention. I was going out free, no
Right?
pressure, just
Just rolling.
lax. Yeah. So I started going to the track with intention, and every time I was on the track, I was like, all right, Matt, like give me 4 fast laps as fast as you can go sprint. So I had that in my mind when I was going to practice now. Well, this one day, go to practice and I'm freaking the morning of, I'm like scrambling early as hell trying to get out of my house because I'm trying to early start, early finish. So I get out of the house at like 5. I'm like in Orange County, handling stuff, hitting all my crews, out at 2, jam home, load up my stuff, get fuel in the body, food, hydration, gas, you know what I mean? Just
Yep.
going through all the motions. And I'm like, realistically, my mind's going like 100 miles an hour, and I finally get to the track. That day, that weekend, we had a race that I was excited for because I was competing. I was like, I got to get this first place in. So my buddies are all there, and I'm like, oh man, I feel good today. I feel good today. Get on the track. It was a gloomy day. I get on the track, I'm rolling, and dude, I had like 3 good laps, and then I decided to just pull off the track. And as I'm finishing my lap to pull off the track, I'm looking for my buddy, jump, fall into neutral off a jump,
Oh
a small
shit.
jump. Okay, yeah. And if anybody knows what happens when you fall into neutral, your bike just nosedives, and my bike's just going like this. And I'm like, okay, like not that big of a deal, right? Bounce. I'm like push off my handlebars, and I'm like probably 10, 12 feet in the air, but I'm moving with a little bit of velocity. It's a small jump, okay? But I was probably in the air, maybe going about 20 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour.
Right.
So I land, I break my shit. I feel that I'm broken, and I'm like, whatever, I've broken stuff before. Like, let's just get help. So I get some help, and then I'm like, get to the hospital. We're dealing with it, dude. And then I'm on drugs, like from the
Yeah.
hospital,
Right.
obviously. Yeah.
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, yeah. I'm on drugs from the hospital, and I'm like, this is like still hurting really bad. It's like pretty bad. And I'm like looped out, but that's all I am. I'm just
Right.
looped
And
out.
still with the
Pain,
pain.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm looped out. So they end up telling me that I broke my knee. Okay, and I'm like, oh man, okay, well, let's keep going. So 3 days later, they're like, or the day of, they're like, this thing is so swollen, dude. Like, we can't perform surgery on you right now. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, you're gonna get forgot what it's called. You guys all, you guys that are in the field know what it's called, but it's like pretty much where your leg gets filled up with so much swelling that it can kill all the nerves and it can do real bad damage, and then
Wow.
they
Some
might
kind
have
of
to amputate your leg.
edema. That's
Yeah.
wow.
So I'm like, okay, well, so they're like, we're gonna have to cut your leg on the sides and drain the blood out, because if we try to do surgery, we're not gonna be able to shut it and seal it back up. The skin is gonna be so swollen, right?
Oh
It's not,
wow.
so I'm like, still at this point going like, whatever. Okay, handle me. I'm tough. I'm tough. Like, this is nothing. I eat glass for breakfast. You know what I mean? I'm like, all right, let's get going. So then like the second day, I'm like, oh, it's hurting. Still haven't got my uh like schedule when I'm going into surgery. and they're like, okay, we're gonna have to put rods in your legs to stabilize this, and then you're gonna have to go home for about 30 days till this calms down. I'm
Wow.
like, wow, okay, so I'm turning into that case, right? I'm
Wow.
turning into
Yeah.
that. So, dude, the third day, I'm like life's just coming out of me. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Of
oh, this
course.
is brutal. Like shooting me up with Dilaudid, shooting me up with like all kinds of
That
drugs.
only goes so far for so long.
Exactly. And it's like
Yeah.
every 4 hours, and I'm asking for it every three. You know what I mean? So I'm like, whatever. Finally get into surgery, dude. Wake up. Got these fucked up rods in my leg. And I'm like, man, I got to have this for 30 days. And those 30 days, I get to go home. And, you know, when I was leaving the hospital, after I woke up from that surgery, my spirits went right back up. I was like, fuck yeah, I'm going home. I'm fucking going home. Okay. But little did I know, man, I was still at the bottom of the mountain.
Seriously.
Oh, yeah. Still at the bottom of the mountain. Dude, I go home, laid out on the couch, man. I literally did not move from my living room couch, dude, for that whole, well, more than that, but like that whole time. I never went to my bedroom, slept in my bedroom. I just stayed in the couch, and I would
Oh
like go to
damn.
the bathroom back and forth, bro. And
How did that affect your work? Working with your dad, and what
well,
was that like?
my dad knew how severe, like he started to see how severe it was, and good thing that we kind of have like systems in at play, but they're still like the forefront of management. You know what I mean? And you being a leader, you know how that is. You still got to show presence sometimes to show leadership. So he was doing that, and it was good, but I can tell that it gave him like a little spark to go do it, but I could tell that when he would look at me, it would bum him out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
of
could
course,
tell.
of
Yeah,
course.
he was really worried about me. And at the time, inside, I was like, I'm fine. Like, I'm fine. I'm just going through this. I'm fine. So I was on so many opiates, man, that I was, dude, like after about day 15 into it, dude, I like couldn't even control my pee. You know what I
Damn.
mean? Like I would be like, have to go pee, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get up and go in my wheelchair and go. And
Yeah.
by the time I'm like going, I'm like, oh crap, I gotta
Hurry
go.
up.
Yeah. So I was like, this is bad.
And then on the other side, because you're taking the opioids, you get constipated, so it's
Oh,
hard to
dude,
take a dump.
totally bad, dude. So,
Damn,
and
that sucks.
oh yeah, dude. And in the middle of the night, every night, my wife's waking me up every 4 hours. Bless her heart, Justine, I love you. Like, bless her heart, dude. She was like waking me up, like, hey, take your pills. And I'd be, dude, I'm peeled off, bro. I'm like
Damn.
peeled off. So I'm like, all right, let's get this surgery going, finally get there, dude. And I just remember, dude, how bad I was in agony. I was in agony. I was like, just spirit was just tired. I was like wheeling me into the hospital. I remember it was cold. I had surgery at 7 in the morning. So I had to be at the hospital in
Early.
Riverside early, So I'm like waking up early and I'm like all fucked up, you know what I mean? And I'm trying not to
Mhm.
look like a damn scrub for the doctor, So I'm like
Yeah.
trying to like wash my face, but I'm like, I have no energy and I'm already getting atrophy. So my ass cheek is just shrinking. Everything is shrinking on this side. And I'm like, fuck, I'm withering. Get there, and I'm just like wanting to go to in anesthesia. I'm like, just fucking
Knock it out.
knock me out and
Yeah.
let's get this done. So I do. I get it done. Start recovering. You know, get better. PT was brutal. The whole process was brutal, dude. It was probably the gnarliest thing I've endured as far as pain wise. Like there was this day, dude. It was probably like maybe 10 days after surgery. I was like putting the drugs on I was taking the drugs for that first week because I had to. But then I was so emotional, man. Like crazy emotional. So one day I just started breaking out tears, crying, dude. And I told my wife, I'm like, I'm not taking these drugs anymore. I was like, they're fucking with me. I was like, I'm done with this shit. Like, don't let me take this. I'm like, I'm gonna tough it out. I'm just gonna eat pot brownies. I don't care. She's like, okay. So that night comes, dude, and I'm fucking eating pot brownies and they're not doing nothing.
Yeah, I would imagine they wouldn't help a whole lot with your pain.
Dude, they're not doing nothing. And I'm eating like 400 milligrams of pot brownies. And that's like, that's enough to fucking sleep 10 dudes. You know what I mean? Like, that's a lot. So I'm like, that night or that next morning, dude, it was a struggle. Awfulest night of my life. I couldn't find a happy spot in my head. I kept, and I like to think I'm a pretty mentally strong person. Like I've been through surgeries, I've broken shit, I've hurt myself, I've been through emotional pain, I've been through physical pain, so
Yep.
this is testing me on all levels. And then next morning, I finally start to doze off at like 5 in the morning. Okay. I've been up all night. My wife and my kids are sleeping. Okay, my wife's pregnant at this time with my son. Okay. So I'm not bothering her, dude. I'm like, you do
Yeah.
your shit. I'm on my own journey right now. Like if
Right.
I die here, I die in my right here.
Dang, man.
So I'm like, I'm there, and next morning my wife's like, here's some eggs, eat this, and I finally start to feel like a decent moment. I'm like, give me another pill. I haven't had a pill like in 10, 12 hours. I was like, I'll start slow, coming down slow. So I take a pill and then I feel good, and I told her that. I was like, man, I was like, last night I go, if there was a gun in the room, I
Right.
go,
Look out.
I would have ended my life. I go, I could not find a happy spot. Like God showed me the most nastiest place. And like I said, I felt like I've gone through stuff that I couldn't, I don't know how to explain it. Like there was no peace. Like for a second, a millisecond, like the time was going so slow, so slow. And yeah, that was pretty much my experience. And I'd like to say that I've had like a real huge like come to Jesus moment. Like, you know what I mean? In myself, like where now I know it's funny, I don't know how to say this, but like I'm a believer. I've always been a believer of God, but I actually believe now like I'm saved by God. You know what I mean? Like he never let me go. I don't need, I know this is crazy for the people who feel crazy about this, but I don't feel like I need to be baptized. Like I have some spiritual stuff that I went through that made me realize that God's on my side and he had other plans for me. And I've always been into motivation and inspirational stuff. Like it's probably like good 8, 10 years, pretty solid. I like affirmations. Like I try to stay focused in that type of stuff to keep my confidence right and my mental game right. And it's something I always looked up to those guys, and I said I want to be a speaker one day. I want to be somebody one day. So when I had that happen that night, dude, I was crying because I was trying to listen to some motivation, and I was like, "Fuck, Matt, you. If this would have went a tad different, you possibly would not be here anymore. You would have left your wife, your kids. Your wife's pregnant. I mean, like, what if it wasn't my leg? What if it was my neck? You know what I mean? Or my back, and I would have been paralyzed. You know what I mean? I was like, talk real to yourself. Don't fucking run from those thoughts. Like, man those thoughts up. Talk real to yourself." And I was like, holy fuck. I was like, dude, I have way higher purpose than doing concrete. 100%. Feeling these feelings, I was like, I have to save these feelings in me. Like, don't try to run away from them or like, you know, block them out and say, oh no, like that's not real in there. That's not real. What's going, that little voice in there. And as I started to heal, I was trying to go back to my old ways. You know what I mean? Like trying to think in my old ways, but it just, life wasn't letting me. Like, you know what I mean? Things were not letting me. I was like, no, I'm not the same person anymore. Like, stop trying to go back to being that guy that you thought you were before the injury. Like, you're not that person anymore. Stop. And one day, me and my dad I'm at my dad's house, and we get into it a little bit. We're talking and stuff, and it gets a little bit deep. And then we kind of have this little blowout between me and him. And then he just kind of just tells me, he's like, you know what, dude? You have a higher calling. You have a higher calling. He's like, and I've kind of known this about you. He's like, and I'd be a fucking like a coward, or I'd be stupid if I didn't tell you that. He
Wow.
goes, yeah. He was like, go, go step up, go speak, do stuff. Go, I know you want to. I know it lives in you. And that's kind of what kind of kickstarted me. You know what I mean? Like after that day, I was like, I thought it was like maybe just that night. You know what I mean? That
Mm-hmm.
moment.
Yeah.
And then the next day he was like poking at me like, are you making an action to do that? And I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
yeah. I was like, shout out dad, Oscar Arballo, you know who you are. And I was like,
I don't yet, but I want to meet you.
yeah, I was like, you know what? Yeah, dude, I was like, what the fuck are you afraid of? I was like, what the fuck are you afraid of? I was like, my past, what hurting people's feelings? I was like, I've never been a bad person. I've just hurt people's feelings because of my choices.
Hmm.
And that, I guess I'm just too much of a nice person that I let that affect me, and I was scared to come out and speak because I would think that people are going to judge me, you know?
Hmm.
And that kept me that whole time. Like, you know what I mean? And I was like, that's the fucking stupidest thing I've ever heard when I say it to myself.
Right.
I was like, that's like, I have strong logic. And I was like, that sounds,
Sometimes when we talk to ourselves, we think we have strong logic because nobody's there to poke holes in it because we were talking to ourselves. Right. So we end up jumping to conclusions and talk ourselves into,
talk yourself out.
yeah, or out in or out of bad situations.
Yeah.
I know I'm guilty of doing that a lot.
Yeah, man. So I was like, all right, here it goes. This is gonna be a wild ride. Like, and I'm not lying. It's been a wild ride, like emotionally and like obviously I come from a trade. I'm like a
Hmm.
whole different person, or like not a whole different person, but like a different way of
You're
conducting
cookie
myself.
cutter. You're the star cookie cutter. That's how you grew up. But there's another shape that you're trying to figure out what that is and
Yeah,
that you need to create.
work through.
Yeah.
Yeah, work it out. So, yeah, that's kind of what's led me to create my podcast. And since I've created my podcast, I've gotten so much support, so many people reaching out, telling me what a great deed I'm doing, and like the topics, the stuff I like to talk about. Like one thing I learned through this whole thing is being weak. Like I said, I've always been a mentally strong person, uh, kind of a natural born leader. You know what I mean? I've been a foreman, so I've led men. I've always never been afraid to voice my opinion. Like I told you, I feel like I've hurt a lot of people's feelings because I
Hmm.
speak just what I feel. And I've always had that in me. Like I've never had a problem crossing a person for the right cause. You know what I mean? Obviously not for a fucked up cause, but you know what
Right.
I'm trying to say.
Right.
When
Right.
you got to do something and it's like, hey, this has to be severed. You know what I mean? It's the hardest thing to do as a human being sometimes because we get emotional attachments and we have idealisms, but that's all they are. Like I say, my logic,
Yeah.
it's all they are. They're just idealisms, but that's it, man.
You know, so there's a couple of real interesting thoughts that hit me, as I'm hearing you talk. It's so important to have a support system in place, right? So important to have people that back you up and
Totally.
that are there for you and that you know that they're there for you. And so two things, like your wife, kudos to her, and your dad. Holy shit, both of those people, like, I don't know either of them, but I'm like, thank you God for them because they really have I think, I mean, it's from inside, but they have supported and really helped this come out, and it's not done yet, right? But I really like the way that you're thinking about this because I came from, my dad had fell off a 3.5 story building, and he was a fighter. He was a runner. He was a boxer. He did karate. He was all very active dude, and
High energy guy.
high energy guy,
Yeah.
and very like life of the party ish type person, right?
Oh, I wonder where
And
you got it from.
my mom, absolutely.
Yeah.
but it was crazy because they told him he'd never walk again, and now he was 22 when that happened, and so growing up, and that had happened right before I was born. There's 7 kids, right? And so I'm like right in the middle. And as I was growing up, he was dealing with all those demons, right? And so he had like all the pills. And so growing up, my house was like Walgreens, like
Mhm. Yeah, like a
Norco,
pharmacy.
Somas,
Yeah.
Percocet, Vicodin, like Xanax, you name it, it was all there. And so he would disappear for a while and then he'd come back and he had a lot of really bad anger issues, right? And he didn't have that that position of I'm going to, like, I'm going to be positive about this whole thing, right? Because it was so devastating to him and he was so bitter and so resentful and so angry, like, why did God do this? Why? And then it was just, and then there's several other things that were real jacked up with his life. And so growing up, I was I experienced what that would be like. So,
You lived vicariously through it. Like you kind of
well,
seen it.
so like when you're saying about if you had left, if you had killed yourself, you'd be leaving your wife and the kids and stuff like that, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, like, growing up, the decisions that he had made, because he was overwhelmed, man. He was overwhelmed with life, with pain, and with emotions, and he made bad choices. And growing up, I had to experience that. And so my whole family, from living through bad choices and addiction, right? So my childhood, I grew up as broken promises, and I got I got stories, man, like crazy shit. And it's on one side, it's like, okay, that makes you, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? I'm gonna be positive,
Yeah.
and I'm
Be
like
strong. Be
you.
strong.
I'm like you, and I'm like, I gotta think positive about things and turn what I had that was negative and that hurt me and that was into something that I can help other people, because I realized that by helping other people, I'm also helping myself. I'm helping myself, then I can help more people. Then I'm helping myself, then I can help more people. And then the whole thing of what I'm doing right now is I'm in that same mode as you are. And so yeah, and so it's great that you have a support mechanism, but and then I just can't help but imagine people that are also right now out there and experiencing a similar tragic thing that happened in their life, where they are up against, between a rock and a hard place. They're stuck, whether it's their job, maybe they did get hurt, and they are dealing with physical pain and then emotional pain, and then I'm not good enough pain, right? I'm not good enough to, like, what's my worth of a man, or of a woman, or of a whatever, and when I can't do this, so there are people that don't have that support
They
system,
don't.
right?
Or the mind.
Or the
Or the
mind.
mind. You know
Or
what I
the
mean?
mind.
Because
But also the mind, we can only take so much, right? You can only get beat
of
down
course, you will
so
break. You
much.
will break. Yeah.
And you can start out like you started out with a good mind, right? Because you're like, I'm gonna take that, I can do this. And then in the depths of despair, you start looking around, you're like, mother, this is not what I thought, and I don't like this. I don't like this, And so, but thank God for your wife. But I'm saying, like, what, her name's Justine,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yo.
So thank God for
Thank you, buddy. I love you.
But
And
I just see from on the other side that it could have been so much worse, and that but your choice of taking that and moving it forward is, and so this is also like the what's the word, the poignance of life, the most poignant, that's my favorite word, poignant, because you think this, right? But then you realize this, and that's poignance, where your perspective gets changed to something that you didn't realize, and life says, oh, you didn't know this, boom, but here it is. Like, oh, so for example, your worst thing so far, when you had the depths of despair, I like to say that because that's pretty, visual, like, that literally created the platform or the springboard. And then the springboard, like, I used to dive and I coach springboard diving, and the farther that you can push the board down,
the higher
the
you shoot.
higher you go.
Yeah.
And so the lower you feel, and anybody out there, and especially me, because
Whew, man,
yeah,
you
it
just blew my shit
it's
right now, dude. No, I'm not joking because you
it's
know
the
what?
truth though.
It is, and you know what, dude? Like, I'll be honest, man. Like, you're stirring up some shit in me, and it's coming out. Like, so I had that, and then, dude, I also had like other tribulations. Let's just call them, like, you know what I mean? Financial things.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm dealing with this fucking pain. You know what I mean? I'm dealing with getting my confidence in who I am. Like, just, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're
The
talking about.
fucking sharpness. I'm a father of 2 kids. Okay. I'm a husband. I also have 2 dogs, so it's just like 4 kids. Okay. But, and then I get these other things. And I'll be honest with you, I'm fucking sometimes driving and I'm thinking about these things and I'm going, right now, you're at that teeter. How are you going to teeter? How are you going to teeter? It's up to you. And I know this sounds funny for the people who, they don't hear this enough, but people need to hear this. It's like the only person that's going to take me is I know who, the big man. You know, these problems that are man made, I know I'll overcome them. Somehow, because I'm a huge believer and I pray, I know that everything's going to work in my favor because it's worked out in my favor so far.
Yeah.
And it's a testimony of my life that I'm here and I'm a strong person, and I try to remember the people who have been around who've showed me strength and taught me that, because I'm a big believer too that when somebody wants to express strength to you, sometimes they see that there's a real hidden strength in there and they're trying to get it out of you. You know, you don't just go to, like, in other words, a weak person and try to talk strength,
Right.
because
You're
it's
beating them down.
exactly,
That's not cool.
it's not cool.
Bullying. Yeah.
Bullying, and I think about those times when I've been told that, like, hey, don't, dude, you're good. You just need to fucking stay focused, keep your head in the game. You know what I mean? And it really is that, because you know what? Um, like I said, if I had to give you just a quick brief of how I felt, dude, I felt like the fucking ping pong ball in the game.
Yeah.
You feel me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where I'm like, dude, I don't like that feeling, but I'm passenger.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm just taking what I know and my ability, and now I'm incorporating what this ride's showing me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what that ride is showing me is just like, dude, your arsenal's growing. Your arsenal's growing for the next, I'm 32 years old, for the next fucking 40 years to come. You know what I mean? And you're not going to get those next 40 years coming with this arsenal that you have now. And I really tell myself that, because, like I said, man, I've, dude, I'm a skills person. Like, just to the core of me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a skills person. I'm not an intellectual person, even though now I'm doing podcasts, but like, I've always grown up being a skills person. You know
Yep.
what I mean? So
Yep.
I understand. I'm kind of the type of person, when I grasp something and I can kind of grasp it, I like you said, I like to get fucking deep in it. You know what I mean? Like, to the bottom of it. And it's interesting to have conversation with a guy like you that has a lot of years experience. How old are you?
47.
47 years of experience,
Oof.
and you've had losses. You've had a lot of,
More than my fair share.
yeah, a lot of adversity, and I see you today, how you carry yourself, and you carry yourself well, man. I can tell you have experience. I can tell, I can see it, but I also see a really strong person. I see a powerhouse of strength, and you don't just you're not born with that. You know what I mean? We're born with the ability, like, it exists.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But are you gonna access it?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Are you gonna really go to your fullest potential and say, you know what? I'm just gonna go fucking ass in the beast, and you know what I mean? And just fucking charge life and take whatever's coming, because fuck, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Like, really, why
That's
the
what we're
fuck
here
not?
for.
Right or
We're here
right?
to experience life.
Exactly. And
Like, when you think about us actually being here, what is this? What are we doing? The deeper you go, the answer I have to myself is that we are here and we are meant to experience the range of emotions. And that's from excitement to boredom to loss to gain to new insights to everything all along the way. And so, I also feel like that is another really important aspect when you feel loss, like real loss, like real loss, somebody that you love, that you're so connected to, that it rips out like a piece of your soul loss, you know, that you're like, wow, that it hurts so bad you don't even know what to say, or when you pray, how can you even ask for something that is going to make it feel better because you can't even articulate it because it's that bad, you know? Because I've had certain situations like that. But what has given me the insight is the fact that I think about, without that loss, then I cannot have that gain. I cannot have that new discernment, because discernment comes from understanding. Understanding comes from both positive and negative, and seeing them both for what they are, not jumping to conclusions, not being prejudiced, not thinking that I know, because I don't know. And you and everybody, we think that we know things, but I've
We don't know
come to
shit.
the conclusion that we don't know shit.
We don't know shit, dude.
Yeah.
We're. You know what's? It's funny you're saying that because I think about this, and it's a funny thought. I'll share it. It's like I think like, oh Matt, you're fucking bitching and moaning about your little fucking problems. I go, people used to fucking show up and have to go to fucking battle. Like that was their life.
That was their life.
That was their fucking life. They knew they were gonna fucking die. You know what I mean? Like that was that like you like of course we know we're gonna die. Okay,
Right.
but I'm talking about like in the near future.
Yeah,
You
like
know,
tomorrow.
like tomorrow, like
The high
like
noon's coming.
exactly. And it's like I tell myself like, Matt, dude, you're a fucking warrior, dude. I go like, yeah, I'm one of the toughest people I know. Like I like to think that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I don't mean like oh like I've gone, I haven't gone through certain things, but there's certain things that I've shown myself. I'm like, how do I am I the only person that like can handle this? Like, you know what I mean? I'm looking
Yeah.
around like, trying to see who I can, step on or, not
Yeah.
step on, but you know what I mean? You
Right.
know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. Right.
Like express to, you know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to say. And sometimes when people just kind of like, yeah, dude, there I go, yeah, and then just kind of walk away, I'm like,
Yeah. They
"Hey,
don't
get the fuck
understand.
out of here, dude." Like, you know
Yep.
what I mean? And
Yep.
it's like, it reminds me of being on the forefront of war when you're like, dude, we got it. I mean, I do concrete. Okay. So when concrete's going and we have a huge pour, there ain't no fucking pussies on the site, dude. It's like,
Yeah.
if you're gonna help, fucking help. If
Yeah.
you're not, go home. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it's like, I guess that's also made it that feeling stronger in me. And I'm doing that since I was a little kid. So it just reminds me, I'm like, dude, don't lose your cool. Don't lose your fucking cool. Like what fucking good is that? And what good is it in losing your cool, whether it's with your spouse, a colleague, your parents, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It never is a good outcome. You know what I mean? Or is it a good look, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you. Why do I know this? Because I've lost my shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's the only way I can talk on it. And people who know me know I'm probably like one of the coolest, most understanding person. But when I get pushed around because I'm so cool, dude,
Yeah.
I snap. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And sometimes that is ugly. You know what I mean? But you know what? I've started to learn that I have to realize not to hold that in, and I
Right.
have
Because
to.
it builds up like a
It build.
firecracker.
It does. So now, I'll be honest with you. Since this whole journey started, I told my wife this, I told my dad this, I told everybody that means something to me that has good talks with me. I told them, 2023 Matt ain't the same person you ever knew. I ain't taking nobody's fucking shit. Those burdens aren't mine. When you're telling me you can't and all this stuff, and I've tried to go out and help and help and help. That problem isn't mine. I take that on
Mm-hmm.
spiritually. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I take it on, and I'm like, why have I done that all these years? Is why? Because I was taught to do that. You know what I mean? You don't just do that. I saw somebody doing it. I probably saw my mom or I saw my dad doing it, like reaching out and or like trying to always help somebody. So then I was like, fuck that. I'm not gonna like put myself in that space to where I'm like always doing this. I go, I'm gonna put out a platform where I'm gonna put help, and for the seekers that seek, it's right here. If you want it, get it. If you don't, it's fine.
Peace out.
It's just fine. You know what I mean? It's
Mm-hmm.
okay. Not everybody was built like this. And you know that. Not everybody wants to win, dude. Plain and simple. Not everybody wants to have a good or I'm sorry. Not everybody wants freedom. You know? I look at people around, like I told you, expressing big ideas. You just don't want it that bad.
Yeah.
You want to live in your little shitty life, your little job, your little ways, your the repetitive shit you do. Like, why? Why? They don't even know why. You ask them
Yeah.
why. They don't even know why. You you ask them, listen, go home, write a fucking paper of how great your life can be. I promise you that when you read it to what exists and what's the possibility, it's not even the scratch of the surface. You know what I mean? And you realize, man, we all just point our gun down. Like we never shoot for the stars. Like you say, what do they say? Point for the stars, not the ceiling.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I
Right.
mean?
And in the worst case, you land on the moon.
You know
Whatever.
what?
Still in a better spot.
Exactly, man. And you know what? It's another thing. It's like I realized, like, you know what, Matt? Like I've had these thoughts, these deep thoughts of where I want to go and how I want to look, how I view myself and how I want to perceive or how I perceive myself. And I can never feel like I can express it because people around me feel like, oh my God, like either envy or weird. I don't know what it is, dude. I don't know what the feelings are. I don't care to know them, to be
Yeah, it
honest.
could just be they don't understand, and there's a mismatch and a disconnect. Whatever it
Exactly,
is.
man. And I just walk away. But there's just so much potential. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's gonna be a ride.
Do
You
you
know what I
know
mean?
who Miyamoto Musashi is?
I've heard of him.
So when you look at the samurai warrior,
Mhm.
that's him. Like that, it was based off. That look is based off of Miyamoto Musashi,
Okay.
one of the top warriors of all time in that I know of,
Mhm.
and like he was the Bruce Lee of his time, and so and it just and he was a warrior, and what he did is they would duel to the death, and they had swords, and he basically kicked everybody's ass. And
Mhm.
then the different at the time, Japan was broken up into a lot of little, I guess you'd call them tribes, and then they were trying to fight each other. Or, I'm sorry, was it China? Lord, one either Japan or China. No, it was Japan for samurais.
Okay.
Stupid. All right. So anyway, I'm thinking of Lao Tzu. But anyway, the whole the whole thing was when he decided. So it was before he died. The last 5 years of his life, he goes into a cave out in the middle of nowhere, and he's like, "This is where I'm going to live until I'm dead." And I am going to put down on paper all of the stories of my life and all of the things that I have learned in this life, and I'm going to put it, and it's called the Goni Socho or something like that.
Mhm.
But in that, he also has, it's called the Book of Five Rings, and that is strategy. So he's taken his life story and has put it together in a book called the Book of Five Rings. And if you look at that, it's the five rings are the different elements: earth, wind, fire, water, and heaven. And each one of those represents a certain style. Like, so for example, earth is like your most basic scenario, and you look at the physicality of the environment that you're fighting. So if we're going to fight, I'm looking at hard floor, walls, items that have physical. Then you have water, and that water is basically
Yeah.
movement,
Mhm.
right? And how are these things going to move? And again, this is a gross down version of my understanding, right? So when you read it, you might get something else out of it. Wind is what is my competitor or my opponent trying to accomplish, right? Fire is right, fire in the
Yeah.
belly. And then heaven is emptiness. It is that I practiced this move so many times that I don't have to think about it because it's a natural situation. Because if you train a particular thing and you are in an open field and then you have close quarter combat, then you don't have time to think things through. So your body needs to just be able to react. And so by practicing things over and over, that's where that comes through.
That
But
is a cool story. I gotta
what
read that. The
oh,
Five
you
Rings?
definitely, absolutely, the Book of Five Rings, you
The
absolutely
Book
have
of
to
Five
read
Rings. I'm
that.
gonna read that for
But
sure.
but the other thing why I brought it up is because when you said, I'm not an intellect, okay, so this is the interesting thing about that word
Statement.
intellect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that statement. So he had written this Book of Five Rings, or the Goni Socho, and I sure I screwed that pronunciation up, but the people at his time that were the authors and the intellects
Mhm.
were telling him, this is crap. What you've written is crap. Nobody's going to understand it, because if you look at it on a benchmark of the time, it was different.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
different
Yeah,
than
yeah.
what the intellects and what the people thought.
Oh,
But
for sure.
fast forward, and now we're looking back, and it was in the 1600s, right?
Mhm.
But we're looking back, and we're where I read any of it. No, but I've heard people talking about, they're looking back at the different books, right? And they see the Book of Five Rings, and then they see these other like Japanese books and things that were written, and his is actually better and more understandable than the things that they wrote for the time. So what that tells me is that when I say we don't know shit, I do mean that, but I also mean that relatively with everyone. And
Of course, of course.
so you shouldn't discount yourself. And
No, no,
I know
no.
you're not doing that, but
No.
I'm
Yeah,
throwing it out
and you
there
know what I'm saying.
because yeah, I know what you're saying, but I just wanted to address it because
Yeah.
people out there are also, it just gave me that opening
No,
to
and thank you,
talk
and thank
about
you for
that.
bringing that up, because you know what, people are quick to identify themselves as something,
Correct.
and that's like that's kind of
And that's bad.
that's terrible, and that's what that's what I should have said. Is I used to identify myself as some just manual dude, you know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
And then um you know, I would just get, like I say, when I was trying to help people, people would always tell me like, dude, how do you have all this like inner knowing? And I'm like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I said, it must have been from listening to all those motivational things and all those quotes and things. I don't know what I love that, dude. Like I could probably 3 nights a week, 4 nights a week, when I'm like, you know, if I'm like, okay, I'm done doing some Instagram crap from the pod and I'm like marketing, whatever, that stuff. I'll like, I find that enjoyable, like like a minute to like just
Yeah.
unwind and like read stuff like that, you know. And I'm like, man, this is good. This just keeps me like, you know, just the mental game sharp. And I don't know, man. I think that like I say, these conversations that we're having are so powerful, man. Like I love that you can go to those depths, you know, because there's a lot of people that just don't want to go to those depths.
Yeah.
You know what I
They don't
mean?
want to open them. They don't want to open their souls in case of whether they're rejected from outward or inward. They don't want to look at themselves in a certain light. And I've passed that point, and I'm like, and
Yeah.
so I want to thank you for doing this collaboration, right?
Dude.
If people are out there and they're trying to get a hold of you or they want to see more stuff from you, where are they going to see at?
Okay, so disguised underscore royalty underscore for you on Instagram. You can check out all my content there. I post daily. I'm also a fitness coach. I do a lot of meal plans, workout plans, and I also have my personal Instagram that has a lot of the same stuff, motivational stuff, and fitness and lifestyle. More so lifestyle on my personal account as well with fitness, not just so much podcasts. And that's just Matthew Arballo. That's
Spell it.
Yeah, that's MatthewArballo, no spaces, all one word, and that's where you'll find me. And if any of those type of things are something you might be interested in receiving it from this guy, reach out.
Where did you come up with disguised royalty for you? How did you come up with that name?
So, royalties are something like, when something pays royalties or something gives royalties. I thought of that, and then I wanted them to be, or I thought of them as being disguised because I think a lot of the things that we like to talk about are hidden, you know? So I thought about the name. I was like, the things that I talk about, they're kind of hidden. Like, you really have to kind of dig deep to get to know these things, or at least, like, you got to be a seeker, you know? So I thought about the name. I was like, man, I think something disguised royalty. And I was like, disguised royalty for you. Like, not for me. It's for you, the viewer. So then that's just kind of where I came up with it. And I don't know, just now, at first when I was making it, I was like, yeah, this sounds kind of odd. This is kind of weird. But now I'm happy with it. I'm content with it.
Yeah.
I'm at peace.
Yeah. Right. And what happens is, as people get to know you, it's an extension of you. So whatever your name is, whatever, I had a operations manager back in the day, and he told me his name's Mario Flamini. What's up, bro? If you ever see this, he's got my same birthday, March 31st. But
Awesome.
but a think tank and a half. But man, I keep saying that we're gonna close it off, and then we start going on another tangent.
I know.
But he's like, hey, if somebody comes up in a green gremlin, right, and you look out and you're like, oh my God, you're gonna judge that person. You're gonna be like, that's a green gremlin. Wow, ugly. Blah blah blah. Okay, so then you get to know the person, and you do business and you're like, wow, this person's smart or whatever. And then they come up and you still might look at him like, ah, it's an ugly car, right? But after a week, they pull up in that green gremlin and you're like, oh, okay, there's Scotty. Or there, because then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And that is the problem, I think, with so many people. They're like, I don't want this image. I don't want them to think of me in a particular way. And it's like, well, what they think of you is their business. Do you, like you said. You do you, and then whatever they think, that's on them.
That's on them.
Yeah,
I agree. It is. And that's what I say. It's like, you know what? I'm spent extending myself physically and my physical self. So I was like, now I'm gonna do it on these platforms. So if people want to reach out and seek away. You know what I mean? It's here for you guys. And will I stop? I won't stop. You know what I mean? Plain and simple. I just won't stop. I think it's necessary. You know what I mean? It's 100% necessary. Like, we need it as men. More men need to hear these stories. We got too many of
other things that are going on
mm-hmm.
that are not
helping the community.
They're not connecting to a lot of people in a particular way, but they're being voiced in a very loud voice. So the people that are not connecting with that are hearing a loud voice that doesn't connect to them, and they need something that connects to them as well.
It's just confusing people. Be honest, right? It's just confusing people more, and it's like, dude, people don't.
We're already confused.
Exactly, we're already confused enough, man. So
that's for damn sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, Matthew, bro, thank you for coming. It was awesome.